Yo, what is up? Welcome to Ninja Geek Games. Are you in need of a Norse-themed area-controlled tactical tile-laying game? You are? Well, that's a coincidence because here I have Blood of the Northmen, Skull. In this 1 to 4 player game, you take on the role of a Viking Jarl in command of warbands to control and battle in areas on an ever-expanding map. This is a tile-laying game where the actions you take each turn are dictated by the terrain type of the played tile. Not only that, you can also take a number of different actions per turn, as each tile may contain a mixture of terrain types, meaning there must be careful consideration to play tiles suited to your tactics. In a multiplayer game, there are different ways to win that include scoring victory points from battle or holding specific tiles with towns. In solo play, you'll face off head to head against brigands with a limited number of tiles used in each game. Also, an expansion Test of Faith hits Kickstarter 6th of July, so let's raid the box to see what you get. These 5 boards here are your player boards that represent your Jarl, and each of them is double-sided. And they all contain a settlement where your warband initially sit at the start of the game, and a victory point area. Now, when selecting your Jarl, there are actually no differences between them. However, you do get to randomly choose one of these 8 special ability tiles that provide some form of bonus action for asymmetric play. Now, these are the miniatures that you get in the game. There are 60 in total of 5 different sculpts, and in a 4-player game, each Jarl gets 12 miniatures. Now, although this is a 1 to 4 player game, you do get 5 unique player boards, as well as the 5 different sculpts to select from. The miniatures are about 25mm, and they're of a decent quality as well. However, I do recommend painting them, as because they're all grey, there are some instances in the game where you do waste time trying to look at the individual miniatures when commencing battle or movement. Now, you can actually use the Games Workshop contrast paints for this, which is a quick and easy technique and gives a really good finish. And the game also comes with these really cool bags that are used for storing the minis at the end of the game. There are 120 unique tiles showing various terrain types, and one edge of a tile is associated with a different terrain type, where we have forests, roads, mountains, lakes, and empty, which I assume is some form of plains. As well as the terrain, some of the tiles also have one of 4 different towns in them, and these provide special actions during the game. And when playing, these tiles represent your hand actions and combat points. Lastly, there are these stronghold models that can be placed on the map during the game that block movement and potential game-winning conditions too. During the game, you'll need to place tiles to expand the map by matching terrain types on hex edges from your tile to those already placed. For the first 2 turns, players need to match one terrain, meaning that you'll form a linear pattern of tiles. As the game continues, you then have to ensure that at least 2 edges from your play tile match terrain edges of 2 other areas on the table. Once your tile is placed, you'll then carry out actions for each edge showing a forest, lake, road and mountain terrain in that order. If you cannot or will not play a tile, you can instead draw from the tile stack and place it into your hand. So when placing a tile, except for the first 3 tiles placed at the start of the game, I'll need to ensure my played tile matches at least 2 other edges of previously placed tiles. So if I wanted to place this tile, I'd need to orientate it so its lake and forest edges match here accordingly. Likewise, if I want to place this tile here, I'll need to ensure the terrain matches this forest and this empty side, like so. Now this tile is unable to be placed here, as there are no matching edge terrain pieces. However, there is an exception to this rule, where a mountain edge can be placed adjacent to any other terrain type except roads. So in this example, it could be placed here. Likewise, all terrain types can be placed adjacent to a mountain edge. So this could also go here. The only exception to this is that a road can never lead to a mountain. So the first action you get to take is a forest action. For each forest terrain on the tile you placed, you can either draw a number of tiles to hand or muster your army. If you decide to draw tiles, you'll count the number of forest edges and draw that many number of tiles limited by the warbands on your settlement tile. So if I was to place this tile here as 1, 2, 3, 4 forest edges, meaning I can draw up to 4 new tiles. Now, the number of tiles that you can have in your hand is dictated at that time by the number of warband miniatures you have in your settlement. If instead I decide to take the forest action, I can muster one warband miniature on that place tile for each forest terrain, so in this case 4. So I can select 4 of my miniatures from my settlement and place them on that tile. If you run out of miniatures on your settlement, you can always take them from other tiles in the game and even your victory point area. Next, if there are any lakes on the place tile, you can again draw tiles or take the lake action. However, I can only ever take the draw tile action if I haven't drawn tiles from a previous action. For the lake action, you essentially get a number of move points, so your warbands can march across the land. For each point, you can move up to 3 units from anywhere on the map from one tile to another. So here, we have one lake edge, so I'm able to move my units 1 tile. And I can choose up to 3 units from this tile, this one, or this one. To move, you simply take your units and place them on the adjacent tile. If I'd had 2 lake edges giving me 2 action points, I could move the same units again, or move another set of units. Note you cannot pass through mountain, and moving through forest edges costs 2 movement points. However, a sneaky tactical Norse skill here, with just 1 movement point, you can move your warbands over any number of consecutive lakes. So they could move to here, or any of these spaces. For each roadside on the tile placed, the player can perform a road action. For this action, I can take my warbands on a road tile and move them 1 space onto an adjacent road space. If there are no enemy warbands on this tile, I can continue moving, but must stop when you face an enemy warband. Now, the tile I placed had 2 road edges, meaning I get 2 road actions, and I've spent one of them moving from here to here. And the tile in the top corner has 1 road edge, meaning I can also move those units, but it appears this is the edge of the map. However, with sneaky navigation skills, you can actually march your warband off the edge of the map with a road and move clockwise or counterclockwise until you meet another road on the edge of the map. And in this instance, they can travel around the edge of the map to meet their warband party. Sneaky, sneaky. And the last action you can take is a mountain action. And this means for each edge showing a mountain terrain, you can carry out 1 battle. Well, we are Vikings. So for this tile with 3 mountain edges, I could carry out 3 battles. But in this example, there are only 2 tiles with opposing warbands. Fighting is made easy, where all you need to do is play tiles from your hand or blindly from the draw deck, face up on the table, equal to the number of warband miniatures on that tile, +1 if you're the attacker. So each of these warbands has 2 miniatures, but as I'm the attacker, I get to draw 3 tiles. 1, 2, 3. The defender will then draw 1, 2. And all you do to determine the winner is add up the number of mountains from each side. So here I've scored 4 and my opponent has scored 2. The enemy loses warband miniatures equal to the difference, and I'll then score a victory point by taking a warband miniature from my settlement onto my victory point tile. Remembering, if this ever reaches 6, I'll win the game. Winning a battle also allows you to draw men to that tile, further showing your dominance on the map. Now, when you're familiar with the base game, you can play with the advanced rules, and it's recommended that you do so. The first optional rule is commodities, where placing any tile with a town gives you additional actions before your terrain actions. Briefly, pelt towns can potentially score you additional victory points before you take your terrain actions. Mead towns allow you to place your warband miniatures into a reserve area that can later be spent for additional terrain actions. Placing a silver town map piece allows you to bribe enemy warbands, removing their miniatures from the map. And placing a tusk town allows you to place tiles from your hand face down into a reserve area that can later be used in battle. This means you could potentially have more tiles to your hand than your settlement allows. The next option or advanced rule is the use of strongholds. So, when placing a tile, and before any town or terrain actions are carried out, you have the option of placing a stronghold model on any edge of the newly placed tile. You'll then place one of your miniatures onto the stronghold to show that this now belongs to you. When performing any movement action, your units are able to pass through these strongholds, but are impassable to enemy warbands. And as the game goes on, there'll be more and more of these placed on the map, forcing the enemy to find other ways round. As mentioned, you win the game by scoring 6 victory points on your player board, but you can also win by owning at least one of each different town and being able to draw a path between the towns without being blocked off by mountains or enemy strongholds. This means you've founded a new nation and become the overall conqueror. The game plays pretty fast and you'll need to be on your toes, as at times a large number of victory points in one turn can win the game, or a well placed town tile. If you're not careful, you can run out of tiles in your hand very quickly that limits your turn or severely hinders you in battle. Strongholds are really fun to use as they protect your towns, but can also disappear to turn up somewhere else later in the game. You need to think ahead, especially when moving off the map, as this can cause an army to appear literally out of nowhere, which is always a surprise. The expansion that hits Kickstarter brings additional tiles with roads through mountains, as well as church models that can be placed on the map that prevent battles. This is a quick, competitive game with some nice components, although I would recommend painting the minis in a base colour before playing the game. If you like tactical area control with simple combat, then Blood of the Northmen needs to be in your collection. This is Ninja Geek Games. Skull.